Many miles directly below the director's office in the catacombs of the foundry was the top secret research and development lab. This well-kept secret was highly coveted place of employment was indeed where Scruples and Gloom, Inklings, and various other weapons of mass destruction were produced. The prerequisite for all employees in the TSRDL was that you must be an alien with the body composition of silicon, not carbon, such as humans, plants, and animals. The reason for this is the increased risk of explosion potential. So, in other words, the director had safety in mind when hiring all employees for the lab with a racial bias. The two silicon workers were grumbling as they assembled Inklings. They shared their frustrations as the director's demand for 10 million new Inklings ahead of schedule for his birthday. Another day, another dollar, they finally told themselves. Many miles above the TSRDL in the director's office, a polite knock came from the antechamber office of the Foxwomen, and Jane opened the door and walked through. Sorry, Lily and Lila were not in there, so I let myself in, said Jane. The director rose from his high back leather chair as agents 3, 2, and 1 were standing in front of the large desk with a plush ornamental rug. Jane, come in, come in. You're right on time. You have already met your fellow agents, I believe, said the director. Glaring at the trio with flared nostrils, Jane spoke icily. Hackensack. Agents 3, 2, and 1 shifted appropriately. Now, Jane, that was a team-building exercise. Agents versus agents, soothed the director. Fine, but you all owe me a submarine from Marino's. I was really hungry that day, said Jane dryly. The four agents shook their hands in a truce, and the director rubbed his hands briskly, saying, to the matter at hand, my birthday is soon, and I want you four to head up security. The festivities will be on Earth 4. I want a party, everything, the works. I want Foundry Planet to be evacuated that day because of the fireworks I have planned. Here are files for each of you with all the details. Agents 3 and 2 picked up their files and stepped back from the director's oversized desk. Agent 1 and Agent Rask accidentally reached for the same file, and Jane snapped to attention, pivoting her two fingers from her eyes to Agent 1, saying, my sandwich. Agent 1 gulped and took the last file, and as Jane walked out, she noticed the director's planetary map hanging on the wall. Many planets had a capital X drawn over them with pencil. Jane decided to keep this detail to herself for now. A pitch pipe in Mosquitoburg tweeted in the key of F sharp major, and 100,000 smartly dressed mosquitoes began to sing. The song denoted Melvin's dedication and bravery in the line of duty. The mosquitoes then had a proper, raucous wake. Lucas Green was again happily welding more frames when another odd and sudden thought occurred to him. He wondered if it were possible to pack silver iodide into fireworks. That sure would cause an awesome rainstorm. Yeah, but that's crazy. Back in the top secret research and development lab, the silicon workers were now constructing the firework mortars that would soon house 10 million Inklings, gunpowder, color effect powders, and silver iodide. For the next 3 weeks, life and activity across the galaxy went exactly as orderly and chaotic as the director had planned it to be. Deep under the foundry, the silicons worked to build the 10,000 firework mortars laced with 10 million Inklings and silver iodide. Silver iodide is, of course, the compound that causes ice crystals to form in clouds, followed by rain. In Roswell, New Mexico, Lucas whistled while he worked, welding and transporting frames into the New Mexico desert. Earl, Julie, and everyone else at the diner carried on serving pancakes and slapstick laughs. Lily and Lila Fox had been sequestered to the director for the gargantuan task of running security checks on all of the birthday guests. Denji the mechanic was also working long hours doing maintenance checks and cleaning details for every vehicle, orbital and ground, that were owned by Foundry Inc. The director was personally footing the bill for the evacuation of Foundry Planet on his birthday. Maeve, the dispatcher at Mosquito Courier Services, was tickled pink with all the work delivering invitations for the director's birthday. The Mosquito crew was constantly checking in or out. It seemed the work was unyielding in that it seemed like the director had invited everyone from 3 galaxies over. Children on Earth 4 still ate Scruples and Gloom, planets vanished, and the director would draw another X on his planetary map. Jane and Agent 3 finally had enough pieces of the puzzle to justify acting on their wild hunch. Agent 3 and Jane had shortly come to understand just the hem of the director's diabolical being. It all started with the security meeting in the director's office when Jane saw the planetary map marked with X's. Jane shot 3 a stealing second call sign followed by eyes on you sign. 3 made an excuse to look at the map, and his mechanical eyes glowed red hot. 3 tapped Morse code on the toe of Jane's shoe with his. Every other day after that, the pair had breakfast at the diner, going over information and laughing at Earl's theatrics. Jane and Agent 3 learned exactly this. Scruples and Gloom cereal globes were destroying real planets. The cereal was in a globe, then the earth milk flooded the inside, rendering the cereal chewable. In fact, this process was remote triggering a rainstorm on the planet in question, then combined with the prearranged nuclear explosives with the works provided by the Weasel brothers, every job was the same. Then, kaboom. The child eats Scruples and Gloom, and a planet explodes. No one of importance is ever implicated. Jane and Agent 3 grabbed a small stack of napkins and started to write their plans. Unfortunately, this reverse espionage had one serious flaw. After some time, Julie took a few days off to make her deposit at pub on the island. Later, while watching the security footage, Stink Weasel jumped up and yelled, "We got her!" Stank Weasel broke his toothpick in half, saying, "Miss Jane, the emotion-chip thief. Boys, I feel like breakfast." Agents 2 and 1 were put on balloon detail. The director ordered a balloon drop, so every balloon had to be personally inflated. Agent 1 looked at 2 as if he was about to make a comment. Agent 2 cut him off and said, "Just shut up and blow." Hungover as always, Agent 1 fired back. "Your mom." Agent 2 exploded. "We have the same mom." Agent 1 inverted his balloon and pulled the tail, making a squeaking, farting noise. Agent 2 sat down on the floor cross-legged, disturbing hundreds of inflated balloons, closed his eyes, and put himself in timeout. Jane and Agent 3 went different directions for a few days to return some normalcy. 3 visited Waterfall National Park and appreciated raw nature. Jane took her car, an original Earth 1966 Shelby Ford Mustang GT350, to a certain aircraft hangar in Roswell, New Mexico. Jane showed up with a little red box on a string and taught Lucas what she had learned about emotions. Lucas fixed pasta fajoule, and Jane ate to her heart's content. Lucas and Jane then spent 2 days appreciating their own version of raw nature. On Earth 4 in the New Mexico desert, north of Roswell and west of the Pecos River, it was the morning of the director's birthday party, and everything was going as orderly and chaotic as prescribed. Every detail, down to the small of the ass of a gnat to the director's grand finale, were secure. The guests that had arrived were in such large numbers that they appeared to be woven together. Personal facilities and refreshment stands were strategically placed to maximize all the guests' comfort since this was a day-long event. SPF products were distributed for free as well as seemingly endless supply of ice-cold bottled water. It was shaping up to be a grand day indeed. Meanwhile, at the exact same time in the diner were Agent 3 and Agent Rask. Both 3 and Jane were drinking Colombian coffee, and Jane repeatedly adjusted her trench coat sleeves as they went over the security details and the plan. As they were talking, Julie scooted up to refresh the coffee cups. Then, placing the serving pot on the table, Julie fiddled with her forearm touchscreen, changing her skin tone, hair color, and freckles 4 times in succession. Jane adjusted her trench coat sleeves again. 3 glared at Julie until she said, "Sorry, big guy." Just then, the front door of the diner opened. The little bell dinged, and in walked the Weasel brothers, straight for the agent's table. Stank's toothpick rocked back and forth like a seesaw across his front teeth. 3 plates of French toast, Toots, said Stank, looking directly at Julie, who promptly disappeared into the kitchen. Still standing, the Weasel brothers turned their attention to the agents at the table. Jane adjusted her trench coat sleeves yet again. 3 sipped his coffee a little too loudly. "Jane, Jane, Jane," said Stink. "How are you feeling today, Miss Jane?" said Stank. Stunk loomed over the table and cracked his knuckles. Jane and 3 rose quickly, but Stink and Stank were faster and now had Agent Rask bodily pinned against the wall. Jane's elbows and wrists were free, so she slammed her left wrist backwards against the wall. This in turn pressed the reset button on the forearm touchscreen. Agent Rask instantly reset to Julie, the bubblegum rave nightmare. Wearing an off-kilter grin and speaking as if her voice was laced with poison and honey, Julie said, "Dummies." The Weasel brothers were not quite sure how all 3 of them ended up in shackles on the floor. All they remember was a flash of blue and silver rushing through the air. On top of that, there were now 2 Julies standing in front of them. Then, one of the Julies pressed the reset button on her forearm touchscreen pad, and all 5'9" of brunette Jane Rask stood before them. Julie's poison honey voice again said, "Dummies." 3 gave an animated call sign for "You're out," and Jane laughed.